Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bassam Haddad, and I am joined by my co-conspirator, Anna Feder, who has been working with me, and I'm working with her on this series titled Frontlines of Educator Resistance, which is a part of the broader series on In Defense of Academic Freedom. And we are now in our 12th session, and we are joined by the remarkable Sang Kil, who will be addressing her story, and we're going to ask her a number of questions about the background and also some of the implications and developments that we are all concerned about. As many of you know by now, the assault on academic freedom has not subsided. In some cases, it has gotten worse, as in this case. In other cases, things have actually changed in nature, and I think we might be talking about this in the future, reflecting the different landscape in the United States in terms of public opinion. Our original series took note of cases of defamation, intimidation, and suspension that faculty are being subjected to in the US and beyond. In this iteration, the front lines of educator resistance, um, the series invites academics, staff, personnel, activists, and educators to discuss how we organize workers across positions in higher education and K through 12 as well, in advance of the uh, impending developments that we are always guarded against, to push back against the repression at our institutions. We discuss a variety of tactics, including leveraging internal processes with the support of unions, legal avenues, public pressure campaigns, and boycotts. If you'd like to contribute to future conversations, or if you'd like to reference someone that you think might be interested, I encourage you to reach out to either my co host Anna or myself. We'll include contact information with the release of this broadcast on Jadaliyya.com, and I'll also include the URL on screen. Before we introduce Sang, let me just introduce Anna. Anna, as my co moderator, you and I have been doing this for quite some time, so I will skip reading your bio and feel free to address some of it and launch us in this episode. You are muted, which is okay.
Hi. My name is Anna Feder, and I am fighting Emerson College in court right now and through a union grievance, working with the Center for the Defense of Academic Freedom on a project called Faculty on the Front Lines, and organizing with the Palestine Anti-Oppression Network. And this series, The Front Lines of Educator Resistance, is something that I've been developing in collaboration with Bassam and Palestine in Context. This series aims to hold conversations with educators about their personal experiences of oppression and resistance. Emphasis on the resistance part. We'll also examine our most effective organizational allies and tools in this ongoing struggle. And so, with that, I welcome Dr. Kil. Sang Kil is a professor in the Justice Studies Department at San Jose State University. She is a scholar activist whose research focuses on the criminalization of immigrants, media analysis of the militarization of the border, and immigrant bans, exclusions, and the discourse of whiteness and the nation. Their book entitled Covering the Border War, How the News Media Create Race, Crime, Nation, and the USA-Mexico Divide, Lexington Books 2019, won the 2021 Choice Award for Outstanding Academic Title, Media and Communication. One of her empirical chapters of her book won a top paper award in Ethnic and Racial International Communication section, co-sponsored with Global Communication and Social Change and at the International Communication Association Conference in 2019. She was the faculty advisor for students in justice in Palestine at her campus, and she was fired for supporting SJSU students protesting a Zionist genocide of the Palestinian people in November of 2025. AEP believes that she was the first full tenured professor fired for Palestine. They are the co-founder and member of SJSU's Faculty for Justice in Palestine, as well as the as well as the tri-chair of the Asian Pacific Islander DESI caucus of her faculty union. the California Faculty Association of the California State University System. She's co-founder, former co-chair, and member of the Palestine Arab Muslim Caucus of the CFA. She won a SJSU Lifetime Faculty Service Award from her college in 2018 to 2019. Welcome, Dr. Kil.
Thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate it.
Um, Sang, I'm going to start with a very basic question regarding what actually happened in your case. If you can just share with us some of the background before we delve into further questions, that would be wonderful. Not least because it's a unique case. The first tenured professor.
Well, actually, the first tenured professor was Stephen Saleta, and he was unhired as an associate professor. And I think the second attack on the tenure system was Maura Finkelstein with this most recent genocide against the Palestinian people. And so I think that my case just reflects that they're going up the ranks. I'm a full professor, and so I'm the first full professor to be fired for anti-genocide or pro-Palestinian speech. And my case really evolved.
Just to be clear, so people, I mean, we're addressing this since the genocide. So we could go back to, of course, we have I actually we invited Stephen to speak at George Mason before, George Mason University, and there have been others that have been severely harassed and sanctioned. But this, I just want to confirm that. All these episodes are just about the last 2 years, which signals how problematic this is historically, of course, as well as recently.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for that framing. So in my case, it revolves around three different events that happened in the spring of 2024. So the first event is when the DEI office, in collaboration with the Jewish Studies program and the history department and the English department, all co-sponsored this talk by a person who had been quoted in their local paper. They were faculty down at CSU Long Beach. And their student paper had him quoted as saying that he didn't think that genocide was a genocide in Gaza. So he was a genocide denier. And for some reason, these departments thought it was a good idea to bring this speaker to my campus at San Jose State University to talk about a two-state peace solution. And so, when I got wind of it, I was then the, faculty advisor for Students for Justice in Palestine. And I was also then the co-chair of the Palestine Arab Muslim Caucus of my union, faculty union, that covers, 30,000 faculty in the California State University system. So I felt compelled to write the offices and departments that I thought, might be unaware of maybe this speaker being questionable. So I emailed the English department, the history department, and the DEI office and let them know that I thought they should uncouple their sponsorship of the speaker. None of them did. And so, I showed up to this, what was supposed to be a public talk in a public library. Martin Luther King Library is the academic library, but it's also unique in the sense that it's a truly public library for Santa Clara County residents as well. And we showed up to this public talk to this person redirecting us saying that, oh, it's now in Sweeney Hall classroom. So 50 of 60 of us, showed up to this Sweeney Hall classroom to find it being flanked by police. And the police then telling us that only enrolled students are allowed to listen to this lecture. So, in my public hearing, I really frame this as an academic ambush because, they could have just canceled the talk at the library when we showed up. But instead, they chose to do these sneaky mechanisms of privatizing it in a classroom, I think because they were trying to time, place, manner us. And I'll get to that in a second about what time, place, manner is. And so, I showed up to this escalated situation with tons of us in a hallway, crowded around, not understanding what was going on. We were literally herded there like cattle, with posturing police that weren't like nice and happy. They were aggressive and, not like friendly. And then unfortunately, I saw this the top Zionist on my campus, he was the co-founder of the Jewish Studies Department, and he's a full professor in history, assault a Palestinian protester in front of me who was a student at a local community college. And I was really angry. At that point, I had tried to warn people that this was not a good speaker to talk about a two-state peace solution. That professor was put on paid leave, my understanding, immediately, and investigated. And there was video evidence of that professor assaulting a student. And I found out over the summer that that professor was put on the fall schedule. I also found out this summer that I was fired. So really interesting, different treatments, basically. And then 2 months later, they would open an investigation on me and backdate it to that date. And that date that speaker came on campus was like President's Day 2024. So I lost the opportunity to capture any kind of evidence to defend myself. The second event that I'm targeted for was the sit-in protest that happened on my campus, because I was going to show up to anything as an individual on my campus that was going to protest the genocide. And that happened in early May. I think it was May 8th. And I think it was organized by an alumni student group. And they had an open mic, and they asked people to step up, and, given the positions that I was in, I stepped up to the mic. And I had just spent a week prior in San Francisco State helping their encampment. I live in San Francisco, so it's close to me. And I learned a lot about the democracy in action that I saw there. It was beautiful. And so, of course, I told the students about what I saw and experienced at San Francisco State University. And I also was aware that Scott Wiener had sent memos to the UC system asking them to weaponize time, place, manner. And time, place, manner is these like seemingly innocuous policies that say things like don't interfere with business and commerce during operating hours. But, he wanted them upgraded to stamp out, quote unquote, anti-Semitic protest on campus, which means basically pro-Palestine protest or anti-genocide protest. And I criticized the time, place, manner policies because I saw them as a direct threat to our constitutional right to free speech, freedom of assembly, academic freedom. And then the third thing I did in the impromptu speech is I said, and I knew I was being watched, so I was careful about my words. I said, if you're thinking about doing an encampment, it's not too late. And then 5 days later, the students decided to do an encampment at SJSU. And it was a very unique encampment in the sense that it was a mostly Muslim student encampment. It was there was only 7 encampments in the California State University system. It was the last encampment to happen of the 7. And they blamed me for ordering the students to violate time, place, manner, ordering the students to encamp, that I was the mastermind of the encampment, that I was the lead organizer of the encampment, completely divorcing the fact that this was a national and international movement. I apparently created it all, and specifically at San Jose State University, which is ludicrous. And then the third event is obviously the encampment. So I spent 3 out of 10 nights there, the first 2 nights, to protect them from any type of police violence. And we knew that police violence could happen at encampments because of what happened at Columbia and UCLA. And then I spent the night on a Friday night before the weekend because I was worried about external groups coming in. And luckily, the encampment was very peaceful. There was no violence to the encampers. And it was an amazing experience, I think, for the students and community at my campus. So those are the 3 events, basically, that happened. And they're claiming that I'm the mastermind of all of the events. And they're claiming that I ordered the students and led the students, and all those claims are baseless. And those are about the long and the short of why I got terminated.
I don't know if you want to tell us a little bit about the sort of fight against this termination.
Yeah, so I got the job suspension letter the last duty day. And I think that was also the last day of the encampment, right before I was supposed to put grades in. And yeah, it was kind of a shock. But also understanding the national movement, I also wasn't surprised as well, I guess, given the repression that I was seeing nationally. And so I think the fights really began, honestly, with my union. Um, I asked them for help, and I got this email basically saying you need to advocate for yourself. And I found that really, truly inappropriate to say to someone who is being job suspended for constitutional issues and academic freedom issues. So I did use a lot of my paid leave, and I had my paid leave up until I got my last paycheck. They sent it to me Black Friday. Happy holidays to me. And yeah, I had to fight my union to get them to defend me and defend other people. So, and that wasn't a happy fight. That was a sad fight because I didn't expect my union to kind of adopt these soft Zionist issues, quite frankly. And so, before I got job suspended as co-chair of the Palestine Arab Muslim Caucus, we had encountered a lot of barriers with my union in terms of the ceasefire resolution that we wanted to have passed at our Spring Assembly 2024. And there were such difficult, painful conversations that happened with my fellow unionists. There was one council that we had to kind of organize around this. It was a council for racial and social justice, where we were arguing with them about taking this genocide seriously. And I, in particular, had made the argument in the meeting that, the apartheid system in Palestine, that Israel has on Palestine is very similar to the apartheid system that is in South Africa, and maybe even worse in some senses. And, I was told that, me saying that was an anti-Black statement. And so I think that shows you the level of gaslighting and obstructionist maneuvers that my union was going to do, because they're heavily aligned with the Democratic Party. And as we know, at the time with Biden, he's pro-genocide and fed the genocide machine. And one of the critiques of my union have always been is that they rely too much on Democrats for better contracts and blah blah blah, whatever, and not organizing members to resist and fight back against what administrators do to us to diminish our union power. And so, yeah, that was really painful. I mean, luckily we were able to pass the resolution, but it did reach some ridiculous lengths. Like at some point, we had the strategy where we're going to go campus by campus to each, CFAE board to get some, help with the resolutions to, influence the delegates to vote for it. And we got this kind of like made up best practices saying that we couldn't do that, which is ridiculous. I mean, that's basically a union telling their members that they can't organize other union members on individual campuses. That's anti-union. So, it was pretty shocking. And I was genuinely pissed off at my union. And the battles just continued, luckily, we have a new president. And so she actually used the word genocide in the meeting, when she took office, where the prior president never used the word genocide. So I have hope that this new leadership will recognize a genocide of my union. And so I'm going to cling to that. But in terms of like having them help with my public hearing, they declined at first. And it wasn't until she took new leadership and I got fired that they, reconsidered their position. And I basically told them, I was like, listen, I have experience defending myself at public hearings, and four or five other faculty across 3 different campuses, and I've won them all, right? So I'm really good at public hearings, and I'm going to choose the public hearing option, and your butt better be right next to me because this is a historic case. There was some fighting. They didn't want me to go public. They wanted me to pick the contractual option of Article 19. Article 19 allows you, it's the dismissal, or no, sorry, it's the sanction article in our collective bargaining agreement. And basically it gives you 3 avenues of redress for the grievant, which is me. I could go contractual, which is the union doing behind closed doors negotiation with the CSU. I could go California Personnel Board, which is appointed by the governor, and that's like no go. It doesn't seem attractive to me. And then the last option is the statutory hearing process, which is the public hearing, and that's when like 3 random faculty are selected to hear your case and make a judgment. So since this was an academic hearing, this is academic freedom case and a First Amendment case, it made sense to me to do a public hearing option on this. And yeah, I did have to battle my union because they wanted to do contractual behind closed doors. And there were some unhappy conversations about that I had to have with multiple staff and union leaders about that. And ultimately, yeah, I had to throw down and be like, I'm going the public hearing route, with or without you. And I hope it's with you because we need a united front in this public hearing. So luckily I was able to, convince them. But I also had to do other extraordinary things to convince them. Like I literally had to write and pass a resolution at my assembly saying that they had to represent people in the public hearing venue if it related to anti-racism, social justice values that we claim that we embrace, or if it's related to academic freedom. And I had to argue that personally on the assembly floor, knowing at the time I was job suspended, right, for free speech and supporting my students fighting a genocide. And luckily it passed. They agreed with me, right? But I'm still fighting with them over this. They just recently wrote me an email just yesterday being like, well, we don't know if resolutions are binding or not. It's just ridiculous. Resolutions obviously are binding. We have Robert's rules in our bylaws. Robert's rule says that resolutions are binding. So the level of gaslighting that happens with the unions around Palestine and around academic freedom, I think, has been a little off the hook. So this is why it's really important for union members to get involved in their union and to vote leadership that's really going to do the best to fight for them. Because when faculty aren't robustly involved in their unions, then we lose the democratic nature of our union. And yeah, so that's why it's been such a pleasure and honor to be the co-founder and former co-chair, as well as a member of the Palestine Arab Muslim Caucus, because I think that they've really set a new standard, especially in our union, about how to fight for things that are real and just and deserving of conversation as well as debate.
I wanted to give you an opportunity to ask a follow-up question, Bassam.
We have a number of questions that we actually end up addressing, but in this particular case in California, can you tell us a little bit more about interest groups that are pressuring and how they might be or are connected with? I think you mentioned something about the MAGA movement.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, Governor Gavin Newsom, who I call Blue MAGA, just recently signed AB 715, which basically conflates anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism in the K through 12 classrooms, which would basically police teachers from criticizing Israel and Zionism and the genocide. And let's talk about him as being an external pressure, right? Because he's taking APAC money and he's also doing Biden part two, and basically, totally supporting the democratic system. And it's feeding the genocidal machine and basically shielding Zionism from any critique of them being a genocidal force on this planet. So that, and people are like, well, it just, affects K through 12. It doesn't affect higher. Oh, it absolutely affects higher educators because it greases the skids for things that, like me, I'm the canary in the coal mine of what's going to happen to everybody else, and let me tell you, people want to think that I did something really heroic or whatever. And the 3 events I showed you, I just showed up. I mean, I didn't do anything particularly heroic. I just showed up and I got fired. Right. So an additional external pressure that came up in my public hearing was, I did a Public Records Act request, which is kind of like a FOIA and for California to do my defense. And, unfortunately, in my opinion, a lot of these administrators don't faithfully, give you the information. I asked the same search parameters of different configurations of my name, to give me the emails when they talked about me. And it's interesting because I had the same search parameters for the head of DEI, the president of my union, and the provost, and nothing came up for the president of the union and my provost, but something came up with the DEI because she was CC'd. And basically, it was an email from Hillel Silicon Valley addressed to my president and provost, telling them about the President's Day 2024 fiasco where there was an assault, to open an investigation on me, how to investigate me, and what to charge me with. And then I showed in my public hearing that they followed those commands. So I was really happy and elated when I looked at the findings of the faculty hearing panel outcome, and they noted in a section called Other Findings that it looked to them like there was external pressure on the president and her administration to go after me, and that they found that worrisome. So yeah, so those are just, some of the examples of these external pressures that I think that are happening in relation to my case in particular. But we can just look at the MAGA-mania machine that's happening across the nation and see that it is a rippingly well-oiled machine going after us all in education, K through 12 and higher ed.
Oh, I don't know where Bassam is. Oh, there.
Did you wanna ask something, Anna, or do you want me to continue?
Yeah. Although Sang sort of answered a lot of my question because I was going to talk
Yes,
about
Sang,
how
you're
we.
doing a horrible job, Sang.
Yeah.
You're incorporating our future questions in your current answers.
Um, yeah. I mean, I was just most interested in thinking about, okay, so what are the institutions that we have, right, to defend ourselves? And the unions are the big one. And so when your union isn't doing what they're supposed to do, when they're not fighting in the way that they should fight for their members, the question is, then what? And I feel like your case lays out an example of how you can engage with your union. And it sounds like you were already in leadership roles in your union, so it's not like you were engaging with your union for the first time and they weren't, showing up for you. You were deeply involved in your union, and you were doing the work, and you were supporting other people, you were representing other people at their hearings. And so it's even more shocking when, you were as involved as you were, embedded in the union, and they still weren't, supporting you in the way that you should have been supported. So
Yeah.
I'm just that's why that's kind of the conversation that I'm interested in, is how do you engage with the union, that the structures that exist. And I know that you have sort of extra, you don't just have a contract, but you have this sort of uh, processes for the California system. So I don't know if you can sort of walk us through that a little bit more. What are the structures in place, and how are you able to engage with them to get the support that you needed to defend your position?
Yeah, I mean, there's two battles I think I do with my union on two fronts. So one is my local union, which is at San Jose State University, and lots of problems with them. Okay, so
Mm.
I see them as a Zionist union. They have yet to use the G word to describe anything that's happening on this planet. And I find that really condemnable. They have not said one thing about what's happening to me, I think, to their members. I mean, I had to ask them to publicize my public hearing. They did, to their credit, they did. But the year and a half that I was on paid leave, did they care? Did they say anything to their members? No, zero, zip. I didn't exist. Okay. Same thing I think happened on the statewide level as well. The past president that just exited this summer, like he knew I was on paid leave for free speech and academic freedom. Never once did he say anything to me. And I interacted with him in person at least on more than one occasion. And it's just like I was invisible, like my case was invisible. In that sense. I only became visible within the union when I became really vocal and really pissed off about the way that I was being treated and silenced, right? About not just my case, but about the genocide and what was happening to Palestine. And so, yeah, I just was just kind of amazed at the maneuvers that they were doing. So another case I think really highlights the problems with unions as well was that, there was a case on Cal Poly SLO, which is one of our campuses in Southern California, Polytechnical campus. And an assistant professor, not yet tenured, was, supporting their students there, fighting a genocide, and had gotten into a tussle with police over a barrier, like police on one side, her and, students in community on the other. And they were like, pushing the barrier back and forth. And it made me so angry because, several years back, our union had launched a cops off campus campaign. This is around the Black Lives Matter time. So this case should have aligned with their anti-racist and social justice values. And my union should have represented her at the statutory hearing, the public hearing, and they declined. So, I had to step up and take up her case. I felt obliged because, this involved campus police. This involved pro-Palestinian protest. This involved targeted suppression. This also involved ADL because ADL had given that person's campus an F. I guess they grade campuses on anti-Semitism. And then I guess they had done some capitulating stuff, the campus administration, and then ADL gave them a D. So I guess they were doing better in ADL's eyes. And then I think shortly before the public hearing where I represented this person, their campus president had done those like congressional hearings, basically where they're grilling campus presidents, and, he performed well for Zionism. Yeah. So, I mean, luckily, I think that professor was facing an eight month no pay penalty. That's what they were going after. That person with our same article, they went after me, Article 19, which is the disciplinary action article of the collective bargaining agreement. And I was successfully able to reduce that 8 months down to 1 month. But I think I would have been able to get rid of it all if the union had helped. But they let that person hang. And so I had to do like most of the work basically in the defense. And the union, having the union help in that particular case, I could have asked about other similarly situated cases on other campuses. I could have asked for some history and context. I could have gotten all this other information from them and some consult, and I didn't get anything. I didn't even get a field rep to help. And field reps are these like paid staff people on every campus that are assigned to help, the e-board of your local campus union. I didn't even get a field rep to help in that case. And that case thoroughly aligned with everything that we have on mission, vision, values of our union. So unfortunately, and especially in regard to the past administration of my union, like I saw a lot of similarities between how I was being treated by SJSU and how I was being treated and other Palestinians and pro-Palestinian activists in my union as similar. And that's not good.
So what are the pressure points, right, for these institutions to encourage them to make good on their values?
So, for me, the assemblies are basically the legislative processes for the union, right? So they have them 2 times a year, one in the spring, one in the fall. And usually most union members ignore them, just like we ignore Congress sometimes, So, but I really think that just like for the general public or voting citizenry, we need to get involved in what happens when the sausage factory makes sausage, basically. And so for me, it was about organizing other unionists to draft resolutions, to make sure that our union becomes more democratic, more transparent, more responsive to its membership, right? And so not only did I have to kind of fight this academic freedom, pro-Palestine stuff in my union with the PAM caucus, but I also took up a lot of the stuff with another informal caucus that I helped co-found and co-lead. I was the former co-chair of, to democratize my union around things like having a strike fund. We did not have a strike fund. Like, how can we do effective strikes if we don't have a strike fund? So the irony is like 5 days before my public hearing, I was at the fall assembly and I had initiated petition with 100 CFA signatories, basically asking for a bylaws change of our statewide union constitution, establishing a strike fund. So here I am defending myself against the firing and also taking the ball across the goal course for the whole statewide CFA union and 100 plus signatories to establish the most powerful tool unions can have to fight administrative malfeasance, which is a strike fund and our ability to collectively do action like calling a strike and doing a strike effectively. And so, yeah, it's been a really nutty year for me in terms of the battles that I've had to do on all different types of fronts, not just to defend myself, but to keep academic freedom, a valuable thing to fight for and to unite over, as well as our union ability to strike and do it effectively. Because we need better contracts than the ones that we've had over the past. I've been at San Jose State University for almost 20 years. And I'm not satisfied with the contracts I've seen. And we could do better, and we can do better if we have a strike fund. And if we can do strikes that last a week or more, period. So yeah, it's been an interesting ride, let me tell you.
Sang,
Go
did
ahead.
you want to say something, Anna?
Yeah, I don't, yeah, if that's okay. I just am sort of interested to hear this sort of the bigger picture, and you were starting to get at that, right? The ways in which you're trying to help build out the structures that make for more effective organizing, more effective contract negotiations. But I'm also interested to hear about. So okay, so you can talk about where you're at your case right now, and then what's the implications of that, right? What are the implications, for academic freedom and for shared governance?
Yeah. So where my case now is I'm officially fired. I got my last paycheck on Black Friday. Um, and I have to still figure out my health insurance stuff and whatnot and how I'm going to survive these next several months. But I'm very hopeful I'm going to win arbitration because I really do think that they have really nothing against me, but hearsay and gossip, which was most of their case that they presented at the public hearing. And so I do think that I will be victorious. I'm hopeful that I'm victorious. And so I think that will be, if I do win arbitration, I think that will be a huge pushback against the Magamania machine that has like joined up with the Zionist lie machine, and now they are almost synonymously one. Because I do think that they're using me, one, to go up the rank of professorship, right? So they're going after a full professor with tenure, so they're attacking the tenure system. And then two, they're undermining the faculty rights of co-governance on kind of several fronts, right? The first front was that, you know, they came after me with violating campus climate. I'm like, violating campus climate? That doesn't make sense. Like, who did I discriminate against? But it's very clear because of the witnesses they lined up for the public hearing that they're going after me for anti-Zionism as anti-Semitism. Now, this is a problem, them going after me like that, because my Senate policies, the academic Senate policies on my campus align with AAUP policies. And AAUP policies basically say that anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism, and that diminishes academic freedom. And so I had to remind the faculty panelists and the public that administrators are part of the academic Senate. They are not above it. And they cannot go after me with some hidden IHRA definition that's embraced by MAGA and the Department of Education Worldwide Wrestling Performance Head, and that you really are a part of the academic Senate. And that means I have a right to extramural speech because they're attacking me for my social media post. I have a right to free speech. I have a right to freedom of assembly. And these time, place, manner policies, though there might be some legal precedents about diminishing them a little bit, but you can't eradicate it. And so basically what happened with the president overturning the unanimous faculty hearing decision for me that basically said no punishment, and she overturned it and insisted no termination, is to majorly attack the tenure system. Basically, academic freedom went poof, you know, and faculty governance is a joke, basically, on my campus. So those are the kind of like broad strokes, I think, that are at stake in my particular case. Hopefully, the arbitration hearing outcome, because of Article 19, will happen quicker rather than slower. It usually takes up to a year, typically, but I'm told because this is an Article 19 disciplinary action that it'll happen within the next couple months. I'm hopeful that's true because I don't have enough money to last a year. And yeah, and these are all intentional too, because the other thing that happened is that in Article 19, you have very clear language that the abeyance, and the abeyance is just like, you still get paid while this disciplinary process is happening. It's very clear that it's supposed to cover the whole process from start to finish, and finish being arbitration if it goes there. But my campus and the CSU is super sneaky, and they gave me the dismissal notice over summer where you couldn't draw a faculty hearing panel. And so that's why I'm without a paycheck now, even though I haven't gone to arbitration, because they're using the weakness of the Article 19 language to further punish me in my position. So so those are some kind of the mechanisms that I think are happening in terms of the broader picture. And then, in terms of what's happening with the fascism that's going on. So the attack on higher ed has been so quick and so decimating. It's been quite unbelievable. So part of the maneuvers I see on my campus plug into the larger picture of what's happening to higher ed, right? So, my campus is one of those what they call Hispanic serving institutions. These are federal government language. And so, we get a lot of federal money because of that, right? And so one of the first things that Trump did in the attack of higher ed was to, freeze those funds. So I do think that, not only is the case that they're bringing against me about, punishing me individually for supporting students fighting a genocide on my campus, but it's also using me as an example for my campus in California and also the nation to be like, this is complicity in advance with higher ed administrators, working with or signaling to the federal government that they're willing to do MAGA mania and Zionist lie machine bidding in order to try to save whatever kind of funding I think that they think is at stake if they don't do these kind of maneuvers. And so I think that's really an interesting line of critique. I think that's happening here. And then also too, in California, the EEOC is going after people for anti-Semitism. And this is super ironic considering that the Department of Ed is supposed to be dismantled, and yet they're going to open like cases of anti-Semitism investigations on 60 plus or more campuses. It's hard to keep up with how many campuses they're going after at this point. And this is where, even though I'm criticizing the union, this is also really why you need to have a union, because, if you look at the UC system versus the CSU system, the University of California system readily gave up names of faculty and staff for quote unquote anti-Semitism. And my understanding was that there was some kind of like reporting system, some snitch system, right, to gather these names. And I think UC Berkeley was the only campus that actually copped up to it, and they gave up 160 people's names, right? Now, the UC system has a faculty union for the lecturers, but they don't have a faculty union for their tenure track. And I think that makes a key difference in how administrators treat faculty, because not all faculty are unionized. I think the tenure track faculty, or, I think they have a faculty association, but no collective bargaining agreement. And that's the key, right? So let's compare that to the California State University system. So I think CSU LA was the first campus to voluntarily give to the EEOC personal data, which violates California labor laws. But because we have a faculty union, the California Faculty Association, and because we're under new leadership, let me be clear, like new president, she immediately sued the California State University system to block any other campuses from giving personal information to the EEOC in this new McCarthyian witch hunt they're going after, this Palestinian exceptionalism that's being practiced on all faculty and all teachers, K through 12 and higher ed. So faculty, if you don't have a union, you need to form one, and it's not too late. And if you have a union and it's lethargic and it's not working well and it's not fighting hard enough, then you need to get involved in your union, and you need to work with other unionists to make it as democratic and powerful and strong as it possibly can be, because this is the moment to do that.
Thank you. Thank you for all of that context. I'm going to hand it off to Bassam now, because I know you probably have follow-up questions.
Absolutely. Actually, I like your complaint, Anna. Sang is making it difficult for us to ask questions. She's integrating everything. This is not going to stop. Although based on basic research and observations that I've been doing, it's going to change course a little bit. It's going to go beyond Palestine, and it's always been beyond Palestine. In other words, the attack on higher education, as our colleagues that we have interviewed here on in Defense of Academic Freedom, like Isaac Kamola and others, address this wave as having started in the 20th century. But for people who are interested now in maybe reaching out, might we be able to, based on your experience, might we be able to provide some resources? We can do this in the final post of this video of just very basic things. It should be clear where to go, whether it's AAUP, whether it is whatever resources available to start a union or to look into it. Would you be able to share with us,
Oh, yes, absolutely,
some links?
yes.
Okay.
And I'd like to make a comment about AUP too, because they have, my understanding is that, it seems like AUP is under new leadership to me, honestly, because, I was one of the first signers of the academic boycott. I think it was in the early 2000s, something like that, right? And so I got on, the hit lists, the Zionist hit lists, rather early in my tenure track career. And I remember looking at the AUP websites to see what kind of protections I could get. And at the time, they didn't support academic boycotts, and I was really pissed, because that just left me and others hanging in the wind in terms of these attacks of our academic freedom. And now you check the AUP website, the national website, about their position on supporting BDS or academic boycotts, and it's total 180, which is like fabulous, right? But when you get to local AEUP chapters, then I think it gets a little bit murkier, right? So AEUP National Faculty on the Front Lines, with which Anna did a beautiful job. Thank you so much for doing those stories. And she showcased me in one of the stories, which I am like absolutely appreciative of. And I think AAU National reached out to AAUP California to be like, can you amplify this story? And AUP California said no. so, so we also need to focus on our local AUP chapters to make sure that they are going to be defending academic freedom and not going to be compromised by external forces, like we are seeing compromises in our Democratic Party, the Democrat, our campuses. I think it's just this systemic infection that's going on. And so we really do have to, have hope, but, prepare for the worst. And you really have to fight battles on multiple fronts, I think, in order to defend academic freedom, defend our profession, defend the tenure system, and defend our right to speak out against a genocide and against Zionism, on all fronts. So yeah, I'm very pissed off by the AUP California's response to suppressing my particular story and what's happened to me. And so, yeah, I mean, even in, again, like unions, AUP, we're still going to find these like problems of external pressure, and we need to not be shocked by it. We need to not be a victim of it. We need to be grounded. We need to be powerful. We need to step into our power, and we need to organize with other union members, other faculty, whatever the membership base is, in order to change the culture and to change that institutional structure. And it can be done.
Oh, it's frozen on my end.
You're not frozen to me.
You're not frozen to
Okay,
me.
good.
You're very
Oh,
dynamic
okay.
to both of us. Sang, before we let you go, is there anything that you want to share, or anything in addition you want to share about the community around you, whether it is the larger community or colleagues or other staff, admin? Uh, I mean, I do know that I have no, oh dear, I have no illusions about what context we live under in the United States, with or without the genocide, in terms of, free speech, and in terms of some of the things we care about, not just in Palestine but also beyond, that are considered, critical, radical, progressive, whatever you want to say, issues. Uh,
Yeah.
but uh, but things have actually changed in my own university and other universities that I'm connected with, and there are quite a few. There's people are more aghast at these things. People around us, whether or not they act on their, you know, indignation, is different. But can you tell us a little bit about that sort of like atmosphere?
Yeah. So, again, local campus versus like the state, let's say. and beyond, right? So my local campus, and I write about this in my Radical Teacher article that came out December of last year, because I talked about my encampment experience from my perspective. And there was just a resounding silence that was happening on all levels on my campus, and it still has silence, right? Like I said, my local union has not used the G word to describe what's happening in Gaza as a genocide. My local academic senate has not used the G word to describe what's happening in genocide. And of course, the administrators are not going to use the genocide word to describe what's happening in Gaza. And so, in that sense, the chilling effect is real on my campus. And there has not been one faculty group that has put out a statement in support of me on my campus. And that's still true today, right? However, I'm still very hopeful, despite the chilling effect, that I chose the public hearing route of 3 random faculty that I don't even know, that were going to hear my case and agree with me that this was a hit job. And so I was really elated. And it gave me hope that despite the fact that no organized faculty group can speak out for me, there are individual faculty that know that what's going on my campus is fucked up, quite frankly, right? And then, going back on the statewide level, thank God my union's huge, and thank God we have like 23 campuses, right? That all are kind of connected because of our union, because that's where I've gotten the most uplift, was from other unionists on other campuses that agreed with me that this genocide was horrific and that we had every right to speak out about it, and we had every right to support our students in their right to protest. And so, it's been informal union groups, it's been formal union groups, it's been, just really uplifting, right? And then I'm co-chair of the California Scholars for Academic Freedom, which covers California, and we have over 200 members that represent community colleges, the University of California system, California State University system, as well as private universities. And they have been amazing to me. They really have been so cheering for me and just go get them saying. And it's just been really amazing to kind of have that positivity and that uplift that, they believe in me and they know that I can do this fight, And then beyond the state, there have been, obviously, that's how I met Anna, through the Palestine, Anti-Repression Network and other such similar groups like that I have been participating in, that have given me the similar vibe as California Scholars for Academic Freedom, in the sense that, they're not emphasizing my victimhood. They emphasize the power that I have to change the course of what's happening to me, to help other people. And that's what feeds me. That's what grounds me. And that what makes me feel like, even though I've been fired and I don't know what's going to happen with the bills, and I have a hidden disability, and I don't know what's happening with my medical insurance and all that other stuff, I still feel the solidarity on such a significant front. It's just mind, body, spirit front, that I know that I will have the resolve to take this all the way through the end. And I expect to be victorious, not just for me, but for everybody, for all faculty, and for Gaza and for Palestine.
I want to thank you, Sang, for taking on this fight, because it really does have implications for so many of us. It really, there are ripple effects that people don't even know about, they can't even see. And then the ripple effects of the power of you standing up, and the power of you going against this institution, that we also aren't seeing, and every time somebody steps up, you're inspiring other people to do the same, and you're showing them the way, which is why, we talked about releasing or publicizing, some clips from the public hearing and your defense, because I think this is all giving folks a blueprint on how to fight back.
Oh yeah. So I'll just tell another really quick story. So the same week that they send me my paycheck, right, on Black Friday, is the same week that my campus president got, I think, like an $80,000 raise. to kind of show the inequality of what's happening in the higher. Yes, in this time, in these economic times, the CSU system gave the campus presidents a huge raise, 10% raise, right? So or more. I can't remember what the number was, but yeah, and they're still trying to give us peanuts in the current contract they're trying to negotiate. It's just bizarre, right? But then, like, this is kind of funny. So I open up the FedEx that they sent me with my last paycheck, and I did find my last paycheck, but I also found another employee's paycheck. And the first thought that comes to my head is like, faculty should never fear fighting admins.
It's a good takeaway. Bassam, is there anything you want to say to sort of wrap up the conversation?
Yeah, with you, Anna, I really appreciate the kind of empowerment that Sang gives so many people and so many of us. And all power to you, Sang. I hope that we could. I mean, I know we will connect with you to just keep up with what's happening. And also, if you can send us some of the material that we discussed, including your whatever written material that you actually have produced, including the article you mentioned, that would be
Sure.
great. We can include it in the final copy. And keep in mind that, yeah, I mean, we all should keep in mind that this affects not just the people working on Palestine. This affects everyone in higher education that values academic freedom and free speech. And a few years ago we kept saying, maybe 10 years ago, that the university is the last bastion of freedom in the land of the free. You kind of like, but yeah, I wonder what we can say today. So thank you so much for your guidedness and for your efforts and for your resilience. This does empower uh, everyone. It empowers me. And thanks, Anna, for being a stalwart part of this conversation, or these conversations in general. And yeah, we have to stay strong. And I am confident that we're not going to lose.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Sang.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Anna.
Thank
Have
you,
a
Bassam.
have a wonderful day, everyone. And let me just say, one second. Sorry. This event and these events under the title in Defense of Academic Freedom are co-sponsored or organized by the Palestine and Context broader project, or the Gaza and Context project, but also by the NF, basically the National Faculty and Staff for Justice in Palestine, which includes now well over 140 chapters in the United States. And it's also co-sponsored specifically, sometimes depending on different episodes, by specific chapters. In this case, and in the case of the last episode, it's also been sponsored by George Mason University's faculty and staff for Justice in Palestine organization, and others. So people are listening, people are watching, and people are taking note and getting ready for whatever may come next. All power to you, Sang, and we hope to speak with you in the future under better circumstances.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Appreciate
you,
it.
everyone.